Matt Miguez has plenty on his mind, and he's ready to share it with the world. It's time to hear the Miguez Mindset.
What's going on? Welcome into the Miguez Mindset on a Friday. Matt and Miguez here talking some college football as we are just 2.5 weeks or so away from the opening kick for both the LSU Tigers and the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Joining me to preview both of those teams as well as a college football preview in general is Brendan Moore from the Sideline Sports Network. Brendan, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Doing good, Matt. How about you?
Oh man, I'm ready for football. You know, when the season comes to an end, it's like, man, we've been running a million miles an hour since September. It's nice for a break, but then once like July comes along, it's like, okay, the break was long enough. It's time. So I guess question number one is going to be when looking at LSU, they come in as the preseason number 5, 10-4 last season in their first year under Brian Kelly. You go to the SEC championship game, and you bring a lot of that production back, especially with Jaden Daniels, all 5-year offensive linemen returning from a year ago, your leading receiver from last year, Malik Neighbors. How good can this LSU team be, in your opinion?
I think they can make the college football playoff. I think they're an SEC championship contender. I mean, when you look at the offense, they return Jaden Daniels, who I think is the best quarterback in the SEC. Bring back a good receiving core led by Malik Neighbors. Running back room, I don't think they have like a top end SEC back, but it's loaded. They go 4 or 5 guys deep in that running back room. But I look on the defense, the front seven's pretty loaded as well. Mason Smith's coming back from injury. Remember, he got injured week 1, I believe it was, against Florida State last year. So getting him back is going to be huge. Harold Perkins might be the best defensive player in college football. So he's going to be a monster this year. Secondary, to me, is probably the biggest question mark on this team just because they portaled in so many guys. I think like 5 to 6 guys they portaled in. So we'll see if they can gel together. We'll see how the secondary looks here because they got Florida State again week 1. But overall, I think LSU can be a college football playoff team. But again, SEC West, it's a tough schedule. They got to go to Bama. I think that's the biggest test of the year. A lot of people are doubting Alabama this year. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but they're going to have a good offensive line, and LSU will really be tested against that Bama at line of scrimmage there.
Now, when you look at Brian Kelly, obviously entering his second year, when he first came to Baton Rouge, everybody talked about how he wasn't going to be able to win here because he wasn't going to be able to recruit. He doesn't fit, things like that. Why do you think people thought that? And clearly, just after year 1, Brian Kelly's proved them wrong, right?
Absolutely. I mean, he was always been a Midwest, Northeast kind of guy. I mean, he just fit in at Notre Dame, I guess. Just because he coached at Grand Valley State, which is up where I'm at here in Michigan at the D2 level. He coached at Cincinnati, so he's just always been a Midwest head coach. And like when he went down to you guys in Louisiana, it's kind of like, okay, I don't know how he's going to fit in going from Midwest to kind of the deep South there. So, I mean, if you win football games, you'll fit in. That's the bottom line. And he's done that. He's one of the best coaches at just simply winning football games. He did it at Notre Dame, did it at Cincinnati, did it at Grand Valley State at the D2 level. So, Kelly, I mean, yeah, he had his doubters year 1, but I don't like all those doubters. I don't see him anymore. Like they're all on board with Brian Kelly and the LSU hype.
Now, when you look at LSU just a little bit more in depth, you brought up Harold Perkins, and you said that he might be one of the best defensive players in the country. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Coming into his true sophomore season, had a monster year last year. Everybody points out the flu game against Arkansas where he had 3 sacks. Just kind of talk about Harold Perkins, what he brings to the LSU defense, and when was the last time that you saw a player of his caliber?
Last time, I mean, honestly, I'm not going to point back too far, but Will Anderson, he didn't have as good of a year last year as he did in 2021, but his 2021 season was pretty good. I mean, just to put it point blank, he was incredible in 2021. So Harold Perkins, I think, can match Will Anderson's kind of productivity. I know we're kind of comparing between Alabama and LSU here, but I think Harold Perkins, if there's a defensive player that can win the Heisman, I think he's one of the guys that'll be up there. So I think he'll He'll have a lot of sacks this year. He'll get pressure on the quarterback. He's good against the run. I mean, he can really do it all. I mean, he's an NFL prospect, and he's going into his true sophomore season. So, I mean, what he did last year's true freshman was pretty insane. So I'm excited to see what Perkins can do this year. And if you're looking to place a Heisman bet on a defensive player, I think Perkins could be a good bet here.
Let's look at the rest of the SEC. You know, you talked about Alabama. A lot of people think that they're going to be down this year. Georgia's obviously the two-time defending national champion, but they had to replace a lot this offseason. Who do you think gives LSU, the most challenge outside of those two? Because those two are the obvious ones. Who else in the SEC could step up and be a championship contender?
Yeah, I'll be honest here. I think there's a big gap between those top three that you mentioned, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and the rest of the SEC. I think there's a little bit of a gap there. You got the tier one with those three teams, and then tier two might include like Ole Miss, maybe Texas A&M. We'll see how they do this year. But in terms of who would challenge those three, I'd give it to Texas A&M just because they have the talent there. And if everything goes right in that coaching staff, because they got a lot of personalities, a lot of strong personalities in that coaching staff with Jimbo Fisher, and then bringing in Bobby Petrino as the OC. They also got other former head coaches like DJ Durkin in there, Steve Adazio. So that thing could blow up. It could. But if everything goes right, I think A&M's got the tools to challenge, to maybe go and get 9 to 10 wins and maybe kind of get second place in the SEC West, topping either LSU or Alabama there. But to be honest, I don't really see any other SEC team dethroning those top three, in my opinion.
Now let's look at the Sun Belt. Obviously, this is a league that Troy and South Alabama had a pretty tight grip on last year. James Madison had a great season as well, but of course, due to the transition rules, they're ineligible to win a conference championship. Where do you see Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, fitting into the Sun Belt picture this season?
Yeah, just in the Sun Belt West Division, I think Troy and South Alabama are the class of the division again this year. But when you look outside of those two, I think Louisiana can really compete for that third spot, alongside kind of Southern Miss. But you look at the rest of the division, Texas State as a first-year head coach. UL Monroe, I know Louisiana lost to them last year. They haven't been very good lately, so they should be able to beat the Warhawks this year, get their revenge there. But I'm a fan of Louisiana's schedule this year. To be honest, they get a favorable schedule compared to some of the other Sun Belt teams. So I like Louisiana. I like the run game there. They returned both quarterbacks, I believe. So I think Louisiana. I have them going 8-4. So, and part of that's due to the schedule. Also, part of that's kind of due to who they're returning. I think they got a lot of good pieces.
And then in the Sun Belt East, is it App State's revenge time this year, or does Coastal Carolina under first-year head coach Tim Beck, even though they do return Grayson McCall, how much does that help them out? Who runs the East?
I'm not as confident in Coastal Carolina as others. I know they return Grayson McCall, but it's a lot of change, new head coach. So I'm not as high on Coastal. They have talent, certainly, to win the East. I'm not saying they can't win the East, but that's not my pick. My pick's actually going to Marshall. I think they got a lot of good talent on the offensive line and on the defense, and that run game's going to be really good. They got a good young quarterback as well. So I think Marshall's going to come out of the East. And I actually got South Alabama coming out of the West there.
Who's your sleeper in the Sun Belt?
Ooh. Now, this team I don't think is going to win the Sun Belt or even challenge for the top, but I think a team that could spoil a couple seasons is Texas State with first-year head coach G.J. Kenney. He's coming over from Incarnate Word. Got a lot of transfers in from Incarnate Word. So there's some talent there. I mean, Texas State won 4 games, I think, the last 2 years. So not a very good program past couple of years, but I think Kenny he's the right man for the job. I think he can get it turned around faster than people expect.
2 SEC quarterbacks as well, and TJ Finley and Malik Hornsby. All right, Brendan, let's look at the college football landscape as a whole. Just so much happening in terms of realignment. The Pac-4, if you want to call it that, it's on its way out. That conference isn't going to be around much longer. What do you make of that and the direction in which college football is headed?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of all the realignment, like Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, and the Big Ten. That just, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. I'd rather see Washington play Washington State and play Cal and play Stanford and watch Washington play Michigan State, Penn State. I know Washington versus Penn State might be a bigger matchup, but to me, those local rivalries mean more. And that's what college football is all about, the rivalries, the regionality of the sport. So personally, from a fan perspective, because I am a fan at the end of the day of the sport, I do not like the conference realignment. I think just the regionality is what makes college football so great compared to other sports like the NFL, like the NBA, where it's all national. This college football is a regional sport, and conference realignment is starting to ruin that a little bit.
Now, looking at the Big Ten, obviously Ohio State and Michigan, kind of two of the big dogs in that conference. Obviously, there's tons of talk around Northwestern and everything that's happened there this offseason. But I know you're a Michigan State guy. What's the expectation for the Spartans this year?
Yeah, I think the expectation should be a winning season. Now, I don't expect Michigan State to go on and compete for a Big Ten championship because they got a tough division that they're in with Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. You mentioned them already. But I think if Michigan State can have a winning record this year, get to 4th place in the Big Ten East, I think that'd be a successful season. And if you look at Vegas odds, their over/under win total is only like 5.5, and it's juiced to the under. So Vegas kind of expects a 5-7 season. I think they can get to 6 or 7 wins in the regular season here. I think the offensive line's improved. I think the front seven is a good unit, probably top half of the Big Ten there. So I think if they can win in the trenches there, they don't need a great passing game. Obviously, they need to replace Peyton Thorne at quarterback, but they don't need a great passing game to get to 6 to 7 wins. If they can run the ball and have good offensive line and defensive line play, I think they can get there.
Now, lastly, obviously, this is going to be the last year of a 4-team playoff. So let's do some preseason predictions. Who are your playoff 4?
Yeah, I'm going to start with Georgia at number 1. I think they go undefeated. They run the table 13-0, SEC champs. Number 2, I got Michigan. Same thing with them. I think they go 13-0, Big Ten champs. Number 3 is probably my surprise pick. I'm going Utah. I know Cameron Rising's a little bit banged up, and their second string's actually just towards ACL in camp, so he's out for the year. So they could be starting with their 3rd-string quarterback to start the season. But I like what they bring back on the offensive line, the defensive line, and just the rest of the defense overall. I think they bring back a lot of good pieces, and people are sleeping on Kyle Whittingham and the Utes. He's a heck of a coach, and I think they're the class of the Pac-12 right now. And in a year where it's the last year of the Pac-12, I think Utah is going to three-peat there. So give me Utah as that number 3 seed. I do think they trip up in the regular season once, but they go 12-1 and they get in the playoff. And my number 4 team is Ohio State. I think they go 11-1. They miss out on the Big Ten championship like last year because they lose to Michigan. They still make the playoff. But right on the outside looking in, I have Bama. I have them going 11-2, the loss in the SEC championship game. And I actually have them losing at A&M this year. I have LSU. I have LSU going 11-1. I think they're going to be in that 5-6 range just on the outside looking in.
Brendan Moore of the Sideline Sports Network joining us here on a Friday edition of the Miguez Mindset. Brendan, before you run, man, tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on that new Threads app or whatever it's called. So find me at BMooreCFB. That's at BMOORECFB. You can follow me there. I cover Michigan State football, Michigan State basketball. Also cover college football as a whole, from everything from the Sun Belt to the SEC to the MAC to the Big Ten, whatever. I cover it. So, yeah, find me there.
Brendan, appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoy the season.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
And there he goes, Brendan Moore of the Sideline Sports Network, joining us here on a Friday edition of the Miguez Mindset. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at ESPN Southwest Louisiana. Give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and more at ESPN_SWLA. And we'll be back on Monday talking more college football, as well as a look at the Houston Astros right here on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 Lake Charles.